Hi, and welcome to another episode of Ask Elly Intuitive Insights with me, Elly Molina, intuitive psychic educator, and my guest today, Julian Bermudez. Hi, Julian. Welcome to Ask Elly.
Hi, Ellie. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. All right, let me introduce you, okay? One of my favorite things. So, Julian, just a little backstory for everyone watching this. Just a few weeks ago, a number of clients had come to me and they're talking to me about trauma and do I do trauma work, et cetera, et cetera. And no, I don't do trauma work. And do you have anyone to recommend? And no, I don't have anyone to recommend. And then I get as the universe provides, I get an email from Julian at that moment in time. And it's like, oh my God, here's this perfect person for trauma therapy and integration. And this is really wonderful. So I'm introducing my guest today, Julian Bermudez. He is called the architect of inquiry. So Julian's a therapist, he's a guide, he's a companion on the path of healing, and he works closely with people navigating trauma, identity, and the integration of psychedelic experiences, helping them reconnect with the deep, unshakable truth of who they are. His work is not conventional. It doesn't revolve around diagnosis or protocols. It's rooted in presence, deep listening, and the belief that healing is a return to our natural state of being, connected, present, and whole. Hi, Julian. I am so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Ellie. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, so let's get started. Aside from the usual, well, let's get started with the usual questions as to what do you do in your trauma therapy practice a little bit, if you can go into that, as opposed to telling the story, oh, I got into this because yada yada, like so like there's so many reasons. And can you tell a little bit about what you do that really helps the clients and the people that you work with?
hmm Yeah, so almost everybody that I work with on some level is navigating some amount of trauma. And I would define trauma as bad things that happen to us that shouldn't, or it could be good things that are supposed to happen that don't happen. So it could be something as small as when we were babies, our parents were very well-meaning, they were present, they were there with us, but they were getting information from doctors or from experts that said, don't hold your children when they cry out.
Mm,
And so when we're feeling this panic as children and we're crying out, expressing it to be held and to be comforted, our parents weren't available. And that can be
mm,
very traumatic. And so it's not so much about what happens to us, it's about how do we respond to what happens to us. In other words, what happens inside of us as a result of what happens. And so when we're going through this pain, especially early in our lives, is we adapt to it in whatever means are possible or available to us. Those adaptations help us in the short term, but they constrict us and they cause us harm in the long term. And so when I'm working with somebody, what we're really focusing on is understanding how the pain from the past continues to show up in the present. How did we adapt to that pain? How have we built our perceptions, our ways of thinking, our beliefs about ourselves, and the way that we navigate the world around us based off of that pain from the past? And so once we can really learn to recognize it, identify it, and start to relate and connect with it, then we get very curious and we try to figure out what are the needs here? Why is this pattern of trauma still showing up in my life right now? What's the unmet needs? What's the wisdom? What's the teaching? And then we try to figure out how can we meet those needs in healthy,
mm.
constructive ways.
Yeah, as you're talking, I'm thinking, what we do know about children is that everything is stored memory, everything is stored in the body, and it may not be obviously conscious because, pre-verbal children before the age of 2 are not going to be able to cognitively understand what's going on. Mom left me crying, I'm over here crying, or any of these other experiences that happen. And some of them come in flashes, when we have memory. So question for you. Some of these traumas, right? Like as you were saying, these things that happen to us in that time before we're two, even before we're 2 years old. Well, you access them, obviously. And so
hmm
what do you do? How do you access them? Like,
hmm
what does that look like?
Yeah. Well, spoiler, it's not very difficult. So for me, I had when I was a kid, it's not just about your very formative years, 0 to 2 years old. It's your entire developmental years
Mhm.
of your body developing. So for me, I never had 1 ounce of safety. I never had an ability to feel safe, to relax, to know that I had a place to go to and that I had safe connections to be around. Never once had that. So
Mm,
fast forward today, where I'm a fully developed adult, I will be sitting in my living room with my dog who's sitting behind me, and we'll be alone. And I have a great amount of security. I have wonderful, solid connections and attachments around me, very secure, and yet I still don't feel safe. My
mhm,
body will grow tense. My heartbeat will start to increase. My body temperature will go up, or I'll get in that state of being frozen, of being really, really scared, overwhelmed with fear. What is that about? Where does that come from right there?
mhm,
Nothing is happening in the environment around me, yet still I'm getting activated. That's the trauma that's stored in our bodies right there. And
mhm.
so when I work with somebody, is the vast majority of the times this is always present. So once we can start to identify it and connect with it, and we ask questions like, how often do you feel this? And for the most part, it's, well, every day. Well, how often every day? Well, it's almost always present. There's something there, whether it's the general anxiety, the heartbeat, the sense that
Mhm,
something's going
mhm,
to go wrong, the tension, it's almost always present. And when we ask, how long has this been here? When can you first remember feeling this? It almost always goes back to our formative years. So just from a few minutes of inquiry of trying to figure out what's present, we can usually identify the somatic feelings of where this trauma lives. And that's our key to start to open the door of connecting with this.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And while you're talking, I don't mean to make light of this, but I just have to share a story because this has just happened to me the other day. So whenever I go through, that's like, I'm sorry, I'm laughing, but this is true stuff. Whenever I go through a tunnel, whether I'm driving or the train is going through a tunnel, I live in New York City. So whenever we're going through a tunnel, or I'm driving through a tunnel, or I'm going under the ground, all of a sudden I start to get palpitations, I start to get fear. And so I'm joking around and I'm on, I'm talking to my friend and I'm saying, I've probably had trauma going through the birth canal or something like this. Only it's really there, Julian. It's like this is whenever I go through that tunnel, no matter what tunnel it is or Zoom like that, I have this woohoo, going in there and I self-talk, I self-talk my way through the tunnel
Hmm.
and then I'm out on the other side. I see the light, I see the light. But when what happens, when we're not cognizant of it, and I mean, I have no clue. I'm assuming that that might have been the cause of it. Um, but I never explored it deeper than that. But I do, I do listen sometimes to clients who are, talk about things that their gut tells them this and their intuition tells them this and I'm often wonder, is it really our, not that I'm judging, but I ask myself, is it the intuition or is it something that happened in, is it the fear response for something that may have happened in trauma, so therefore they're not open to taking this chance. You follow me? Yeah, I know you
Yeah.
do. So what do
Mhm.
you think about that?
Hmm. Well, a question I like to ask people is, have you ever had a gut feeling that said you should do something that you ignored, and it later turned out you should have listened to it? And the overwhelming answer is, well, yes, of course. See, we have these signals in our bodies. We might call them emotions, fear, anger, sadness, shame, disgust, so on and so forth. And these are signals from our body about how we interact and relate with the environment around us. So humans have developed over the last who knows how long. It keeps going back further and further every time we really start to examine this. Humans have developed in nature, and up until the blink of an eye, we lived in nature. How long can you survive in nature if you're not in tune with your gut feelings? So
Mhm.
we all have these wonderful, incredible signals from our bodies that help us survive. They help us identify threats, they help us identify things that can go wrong for us, pains, and they help us survive and thrive. But what happens when you're a child, for instance, and Your attachments with your parents, which are the most important thing, are threatened by your emotional expression, your authenticity. In other words, if you're living in an environment where the people around you that you're connected with are causing you pain or causing you fear, or they're not meeting your needs, so you're getting angry. And what happens if you voice that anger or you voice that fear and it causes more of a threat, more of a disconnection? In other words, the person that you are, your authenticity, threatens the relationships, which are the most important thing. Well, we
Mhm,
learn to suppress our emotions very
mhm.
quickly, very easily in life. That's an adaptation to a trauma right there. And so
Yes.
later in life, we're disconnected from all these feelings and we're not in tune with them. And it sounds like the people who are coming to you are at least somewhat reconnected or in tune with those feelings. But there is inherent wisdom that is involved with all of these signals from the body. And so a very big part of this healing is to reconnect with those feelings because those are an expression of who we are as individuals and who we are as humans. And a lot of the times we had to disconnect from them, suppress them to adapt to trauma.
Mhm. Yeah, makes total sense. Whew, yeah. Okay. I have some thoughts that just came up. So when clients, okay, so let's just take a scenario, okay? People who have fear around authority. And so whenever there's a conversation that needs to happen with anything that anyone or any institution that the individual or the client perceives as an authority figure, and then remember what happens, the body starts to go into the whatever the anxiety, whatever the body does for that particular person. So as a trauma specialist, obviously you're going to tell them this is based on some sort of trauma. So what would you do? What do you do with, or well, yeah, what do you do with that situation?
Mhm. And that's a very real situation that a lot of people experience. We know this from the research. We might call it white coat syndrome, where when people come into a doctor's appointment, they get very scared. They get very agitated, anxious, nervous. Their heart rate, their blood pressure, everything is higher. So when they take the vitals at the beginning of an appointment, it's always very different than at the very end of the appointment. That's because the white coat presents as an authority. And a lot of the times people have very negative experiences with these authoritative figures where they tell you what to do with your bodies, they tell you what to do with your health, they tell you what to do with your children. And it might be in complete conflict with your inherent wisdom of being a mother or being a parent or knowing how to take care of yourself. So this is a dynamic that we have in our society right now, which is a great cause of stress, lack of control, lack of autonomy. And it's not just in like the medical industries. It's not just with the police or law enforcement. It's oftentimes with our parents very early in life because our parents might get parenting information that says, well, when your kid expresses an emotion like anger, they need to be put in a timeout. They need to be disconnected and exiled until they can learn to regulate that emotion, in which case, then they can get the attachment, the connection that they're dependent on for survival. So, this is very real that when we interact with somebody who's presenting or a system who's presenting as an authority that has some control over us, that we feel some amount of anger, some amount of fear or anxiety. And so, what we would want to do here is first recognize I'm getting anxious, I'm getting angry. And once we can identify what emotion is present, then the next thing is, what do we do with that? What is our relationship with it? Do I want it to go away? Do I want to fight it and exile it and send it to a timeout until it can regulate? Do I accept it? Do I welcome it? Do I embrace it? Do I try to listen to it? And that's what we want to try and do is we want to try to accept the emotion that we're feeling. We want to embrace it and get to a point where we can get very curious about it. So identify, I'm angry. I'm scared right now. I accept I'm angry and I'm scared. I'm not going to fight this. And then I get very curious about this and I start asking myself questions. How long have I been feeling this? In what conditions, what environment, what circumstances did I first start feeling this in? These people are reminding me of a time where I had no autonomy. I had no agency in my life. And if you work with a doctor, you might have very little agency in your life today, but that's a very common theme. So, what we would want to do is say, what was the unmet need? What did I need when I first started feeling this emotion, this sensation? Boundaries, some amount of ability to navigate the situation, somebody to understand and see what I'm feeling, to see, oh, he's angry, he's scared right now. He
Mhm.
needs to have some amount of control. And then ideally, maybe to have somebody there to help me set those boundaries and to offer me some amount of comfort. And so then once I know what the unmet needs are, okay, I'm anxious, I'm scared, I'm angry right now because I need some autonomy. I need boundaries. I need somebody to understand how I'm affected by this. Then I try to meet those needs myself in very healthy, constructive ways, which might look like setting boundaries. And this is very dangerous because when you start setting boundaries with somebody who doesn't like boundaries, it's going to jeopardize the thing that we lost in the beginning, which was the attachment.
Wow. Yeah. Whew. How, how do people come to you? They come, how do people work? How do you work with people, Julian? Do you hear me? Did I
Yeah,
freeze?
yeah,
Oh,
a
I'm
little
sorry.
bit, but I
Okay.
just thought there was a little bit more.
Oh no, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, let me tell you this about me. It's a story, but it's so
Hmm.
I think in my head, and I think everybody understands what I'm thinking in my head because I communicate telepathically, and I'm assuming everybody else communicates telepathically, and I don't use words, and then I don't use a lot of words. And
Sure.
so it's like, what are you talking about, Ellie? Once I'm having a
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. So your question, how do people find me or how do people
Yeah,
work with
yeah.
me?
Like, how do you work
Yeah.
together with people? Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah, so I work with a whole wide range of people. Usually, it's people who have been in therapy. They've sought medical expertise for a certain amount of time, and they just weren't getting anywhere with it. And so they're looking for something a little bit more. And so a lot of people all around the country and all around the world, for that matter, come and work with me. When I work with somebody is if they're remote, if they're far away from me, we'll do a lot of the therapy over the phone, kind
Mhm.
of like we're doing here. I usually don't do the Zoom calls, but we'll do it over the phone. And for some people, that's more than enough.
Mhm.
For other people, they want to travel to Portland, Oregon, where I'm at,
Yeah.
and work directly with me, in which case, depending on what their capacity is, they might stay here for 5 days or a week or sometimes 2 weeks. And we'll do a little bit more of an intensive daily regimen where we really focus on building this practice of reconnecting with those feelings that we were talking about and really building a relationship with them so we can understand how often am I feeling this and why is it here? And really cultivating the ability to meet those unmet needs ourselves in real time. So we'll just continuously practice that over and over and over again, and we can go much deeper. And depending on how long they stay, that's what we really work on right there. And this right here, you mentioned earlier that I do psychedelic integration.
I was just, you see.
Yeah. Mhm. See that? I
Yeah,
picked
you
up
got
on
it.
it.
Woohoo, you got it.
Yeah.
How'd you know I was thinking that? Could you tell? Could you see it? You felt it, right?
Yeah, yeah, you mentioned it right beforehand. That's how you communicate. So I started listening.
Tell us a little bit about that. Because when the
Yeah,
moment, because, here, me back in the day, right? As soon as I hear psychedelic experiences, I'm like, well, back into, yeah, LSD, et cetera, and my understanding is that times have changed. So,
yeah.
share a little bit, please, about
Hmm.
the psychedelic integrations.
Yeah. So the word psychedelic, the literal meaning of it is broken up into two parts, psyche-delic. Psyche being all of the immaterial aspects of who we are, our thoughts, our perceptions, our mental patterns, the way that we process information, our emotions, our spirituality, our intuition, all of these aspects of who we are that's not physical. And then delic is uh, arising, manifesting, emerging. So when we put those two together, what we have is a deep connection to ourselves. We reconnect with all of these aspects that we might have been disconnected from. So everything that I do with people is to facilitate a reconnection to who we are, mostly those immaterial aspects. So just doing the practice that we've been talking about so far of reconnecting with our emotions and our intuition and so on, that is a psychedelic experience by definition. And so
Mm.
everything that I'm doing is to try to facilitate this connection. Now, of
Mm.
course, you mentioned psychedelic aids, like various
Did I
substances and things like that.
misinterpret this?
Now, you're absolutely right. So we can get to that experience very, very quickly, of course, with the use of an aid like that.
Mm.
And I can help people facilitate that as well. And so what we'll do is for weeks leading up to a deep psychedelic experiences, we practice getting to that state on our own. And so
Mhm.
we take this inventory of what's present inside of us. What is our internal state looking like? Is it chaotic? Is it turbulent? Is it calm? Is it peaceful? Is it repressed and exiled? And what is our relationship with all of these specific emotions? Do we push them away? Do we like them? So on and so forth. So once we can really take an inventory of all the pains, all the constrictions, all the tensions, and our relationship with them, then we really focus on building the ability to connect with those things inside of us that we might not like,
Mm.
that we might have spent a whole lifetime pushing away or fighting.
Yeah, yeah.
Once we can get that practice of really building the awareness, identifying, recognizing what's there, accepting it, getting curious about it, and nurturing it, taking care of soothing those emotions and those pains, then when we use a deeper facilitated psychedelic experience, we use it as a tool to go deeper into that practice. So we'll
Right.
do that exact practice over several hours while somebody's having a deep facilitated experience. And the goal is to use that as a tool to go much deeper in this healing practice that we've already been building.
Nice. Sounds interesting. Can you share a story without mentioning any names? Do like can you share a story? Something that happened where somebody had a really profound, deep experience and then they had this great, like I guess they had an aha moment or something. You know what
Mhm.
I'm talking about?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can tell you one from myself.
Mhm.
So that'll be easier. I don't have to worry about any confidentiality there.
Well, we'd never mention names anyway, so
Yeah.
I'd
Um,
love to hear it. I'd love to hear it.
sure, sure. So when I was in my very early 30s, I had gotten this deep physical illness, and it had pushed me pretty much to my deathbed. I wasn't so sure I was going to make it out of this. Um, Diagnoses, scans, all the things were not working, but it was very clear something very bad was going on, and the doctors were getting, very concerned they couldn't figure this out. We eventually figured out what was going on, and when I got the official diagnosis after some scans, I had actually decided to go down to Peru and to work with ayahuasca and to work with some indigenous down there instead of going the surgery and the chemical route and all that stuff. And so while I was down there, I had this really deep experience with ayahuasca where I had seen all this pain that was in this physical illness that I was having, this physical disease, and this pain which was centered around my gut and my digestive tract. What I was seeing was is this pain, this physical pain, was identical to the physical pain of when I remember the trauma, which is always intrusive memory coming up, and I'm thinking about it, I'm reliving it, I'm literally here with you now. I mean, not now, but at this time, I could be with you, but I'm not with you. I'm in the past reliving these old patterns, and I'm trying to have arguments, I'm trying to set boundaries, so on and so forth. It was a very confrontational conflict type of experience that I was just always in, and my body was reacting to that constantly. So the message that I got there, which it wasn't solely from the psychedelic, I was also reading When the Body Says No by Gabor Mate, which was telling me all of these repressed emotions are having effects on you physically today. What I saw was this pain from the past was manifesting today. It was still here. And if I could heal my relationship with the pain from the past, the physical symptoms should resolve. It took me years, a long time of really working with those emotions, but that insight right there that I got during that psychedelic experience was one that set a cascade, a domino effect of me really regaining my agency and my responsibility in my own physical health. And today, I don't have any of those medications. I never took any of the surgeries that they were insisting that I get, and I have next to no symptoms. Granted, they come back. They do come back. I do feel them from time to time when things get really stressful or when something's happening. And that's a sign to slow down and to take care of myself to go back into these feelings. And that practice all started way back there with that insight that I had.
Mm, mhm. Awesome. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I love that. And I love that you have that deep recognition. And we know that everything is all connected. So no matter, if someone's facilitating a psychedelic experience, and they're in a controlled environment, I call it I'm old school. Okay. So, back in the day, we didn't have controlled environments. All right. So we just had experiences. Oh, true confessional. Yes, yes. Don't share these things, mom. Okay. But it was just very different experiences. We had experiences and they were psychedelic experiences. But I do believe that when they are controlled and when there is someone who can carefully facilitate and ask the right questions and guide and really help a client to get to the root of what the cause is, which will then I'm assuming that many times the root will be shown to the person during the experience. Is that true? Is the
Yeah,
cause often revealed during that time? Do you find
a
that
lot
to
of the
be
times.
true?
Yeah. See, what happens when we go through pain that we don't have the ability to process or to navigate is we have this wonderful survival mechanism that's built into every one of us, which is when something very stressful is happening, there's only a few options we have. We could set boundaries with it. We could say, stop that, don't do that, I don't like it, or we could go away. But when we're kids, and if it's your parents who are doing that, you can't do either of those. You might not know it. You can set boundaries. And if you set boundaries, it might make things worse, and you certainly can't go away. So, what we do is we go away mentally. We
Mm,
disconnect from what we're feeling. It's a wonderful survival mechanism. It helps us in the short term, causes us tremendous pain in the long term.
mm,
So once we can really start to cultivate a solid foundation of learning how to navigate pain, learning how to process stress, how to navigate all of these really turbulent experiences that we have in the present and in the past, more and more of those roots of the trauma that we were talking about will start to reveal themselves. They'll start to become conscious because we now have the ability to process it. And when we work with a psychedelic and we get into this deep psychedelic experience, some of the characteristics of it are that conditioned mind that has all of those defenses that are there to protect us from that pain, it gets a little bit smaller and a little less pronounced, and we can build a little bit more safety to go into those spaces. So when we take the time to prepare beforehand, and we really start to take that inventory of all the pains, and we start to build the relationship, and we build the practice of going to that space every day, multiple times a day, trying to connect with it as much as possible. When we go into the psychedelic experience with the intention of going into that pain and finding it and processing it and expressing it and comforting and soothing it, a lot of the times, exactly as you said, it comes right up.
mhm, mhm, mhm. Ooh, okay. Awesome. Deep. Next question. Do you help your clients reprogram their thoughts? Right? Because we do know that consciousness and energy create our reality. So when people are having, if they're not aware of their past traumas, or maybe they are aware of their past traumas, but I'm going to say a lot of times people are unaware of their past traumas and they're just running around in these as Eckhart Tolle called it, the pain body. Okay.
Mm,
So they're running around in the pain body and not recognizing that they're holding on to the pain body for various reasons. Okay. One, of course, to continue the suffering as they know it to be, because they're, let's call it an addiction to suffering, because we know no different. All right.
mhm,
That's what we've learned. And then once the pain body, let's say they've come, they've come, you've worked with them, they've been, do you reprogram them in their thoughts with their thinking
mm,
also?
mhm. Yeah, I was listening to a song the other day. I never really listened to it. I knew the song because it's a popular song, but I never really listened to the song. Someone that I used to know, and he says in there, he says, you can get addicted to a certain kind of sadness, like
Hmm.
resignation to this end. And that's exactly what you're talking about there. See,
Hmm.
when we're kids, for instance, if the main connection that we have with our parents is one of conflict, it's one of abuse, it's one of pain,
Hmm.
that's what connection looks like to us,
Right.
right?
That's right.
Because our parents are the most important connection that we have as kids. And if all that we're doing is always fighting and criticizing and judging and evaluating and attacking and punishing each other, well,
Mhm.
when we become adults and we look for connection and love, what does that look like?
Right, exactly.
So there's the trauma, there's the unconscious mental pattern, the perception of how this looks like, and then we continue it unconsciously. We don't even know that we're looking for it, and we keep finding ourselves in those exact same situations. So once we start to really do this practice that we're talking about looking at that pain, looking at where it comes from, really connecting with it, seeing what the unmet needs are, seeing how we adapted to it and how that shows up constantly here, we automatically start to reprogram our way of thinking, our neural patterns, our nervous system, whatever you want to call it. The psychedelic experience is really well known for what they would call neuroplasticity, neurogenesis, the new connection of neural patterns. Well, as
Yeah.
soon as we can identify the old patterns and then we make choices on how we're going to move forward and we do new things, we absolutely start to create new patterns very quickly. I don't do that. The people that I work with, they do it on their own. I just help them see the dynamics
Hmm.
that they need to
Hmm.
do. I show them the door, they walk
Oh,
through it.
okay.
And that's the only way that it works, as far as I know.
Right, right. Awesome. Yeah, yeah. Whew, okay. Anything else you want to share before I start asking, to letting people know where to find you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Anything else you want to share about your work? And you work with you have a partner that you work with, right? And your dog, right? That's what I read on
Yeah, yeah,
the
there's three of us.
side.
There's Miss Layla behind me.
Yeah.
Um,
Who's busy
yeah, and
taking a nap,
this is
right?
our therapy space that I'm in
Uh-huh.
right here.
Nice, nice,
Well,
nice.
she's 15 years old now.
Get
She's
out.
15,
Really?
so yeah.
Wow, wow.
And she takes this job very seriously.
Hmm.
She is very much in tune with it. And she everybody, almost everybody that has come here to work with us has remarked at how much Layla can make them feel safe. Because,
Wow.
if somebody comes from across the country and let's say it's a woman who's traveling by herself and she's working through, say, I don't know, sexual abuse, and she
Hmm.
comes to this place where there's me,
Hmm.
I mean, we've talked on the phone, but you're meeting me in person for the first time. It's very easy to not feel safe, to be scared, and to be on your defenses. And then when you come in the room and you see her, Layla, laying on her back, snoring, you're like, oh yeah, nothing bad is going on here.
Yeah, yeah,
And then
yeah.
yeah, my partner Claire, she works with me as well.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's the three of us here. And
Nice.
yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. And it's a very safe environment and a very kind and loving environment also. And we're all getting that energy from this conversation, as well as your website. And anything else you'd like to share before I tell people where to find you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Anything there? I know
Hmm.
you have books, you have published articles, right? And there's a lot of information on your website, which is going to be at the bottom link of the podcast and on the YouTube channel, so that people will have access to finding you all over. So that will be out there for everyone. But in terms of anything else that you want to share about your work and why you love doing what you do?
Mm. That's a really good question right there. Why do I love what I do? Um, you know, everything that I help other people go through is something I've gone through myself. All of this is practice that I do for myself. It's not something that I've read in a book and said, yeah, this is what you should do. You should try this. Um, all of this is stuff that I've gone through. And so when people, the Buddha said, it's because you suffer and it's because I suffer that we can understand one another. And so all of the stuff that I've gone through really enables me to really work with other people.
Mm.
And at multiple points in my life, I had this resentment, this anger, this sour bitterness of just always having to work on something that was there and coming up. And that mindset, I don't know if it's inevitable or not, but it's not very helpful. And I meet a lot of people who are like, okay, this is great. I'm making tremendous progress. Things are changing, and it's work, and I don't want to do it. And yeah, I just taking a moment to recognize that I think a lot of people get in that space where it's very challenging, and that's not the end destination. That is just a spot in this journey that I know of. And when we talk about being in tune with ourselves and being connected to others and to nature and to what we do in this world, meaning that what we do represents who we are, I don't know if there's anything more valuable in life than really engaging with life and participating in it and taking responsibility for it. So this journey of healing, it's not something that just we get there and it ends. It's a lifelong journey and it's so incredibly worthwhile. So to be able to do it myself and to be able to participate in it with other people as well is for me one of the most worthwhile things that I have. That's why I really enjoy doing it.
Yeah, yeah. And that's beautiful, Julian. And it brings me to two things that you said that I just want to touch on also. It's people taking personal responsibility for their own illnesses and their own conditions. And what I mean by personal responsibility is that it's within us, meaning it's our bodies, therefore it's our trauma. It's and we can be victims of it, yes, and we can also take personal responsibility for discontinuing the personal trauma that is going on within us. So we take responsibility for everything that quote unquote happened to us, interpretations, the way that we understood it from our limited capacity at whatever time and age these things occurred. And in the space of the responsibility comes the freedom in my worldview. All right, when we take responsibility for something, then we can also have that worldview so that now we're not looking for and we're talking future, after we go to see the healer or we go to see the therapist or we go to do the work, that we then start to take the responsibility for ourselves on that so that we don't no longer become addicted to the facilitator. And that, again, to me, is part of the beauty of contribution. And when we're contributing to the benefit of another human being, or we're contributing to the benefit of humanity or collective consciousness, that I guess I'm sticking my personal interpretations here. That to me is also highly rewarding. That is our, fulfilling on our human potential to be a contribution to others and the world. And we do it, many of us do it one individual at a time, one situation at a time. And that's something that I love about with the work that you're doing. It's one person healing at a time. Then we know the ripple effect on that.
Hmm. Thank you, Ellie. We want to be very careful about the victim mentality, blame.
Hmm.
Something Joseph Campbell talks a lot about is the first stage in the journey, the hero's journey, is answering the call. Um, One of my teachers, Gabor Mate, says, "You're not responsible for the world that shaped your mind. We're not responsible for what happened to us, but we are responsible for our minds that shape the world."
Yes.
So we can reclaim a lot of agency by taking responsibility, by not blaming others for what happened to us, by not making ourselves the victim. And we can choose how we act and how we respond to the things that are happening. And when we do this, we really do liberate ourselves from all those old patterns. And then we can really change the patterns that are getting handed down to the next generations. In other words,
Hmm.
we become very powerful when we reclaim our own agency.
Absolutely. I love that, Julian. I absolutely love that. And anything else you want to share? Because I'm going to wrap it up for us, and then just going to send a lot of people your way.
Thank you. I will say I've really enjoyed this conversation with you. You have a wonderful presence, Ellie, that just really helps. Even, I get nervous, I get scared. When doing these podcasts, it was a big hump for me to overcome putting myself out there in this sense. See, we're all going through it still, always
Yeah,
working on
yeah,
something,
yeah,
and you
always.
you just have a way of helping me relax and have fun in this conversation. So
Oh,
thank you very
thank
much.
you.
I really
Thank you,
appreciate you.
thank you, thank you. That's all my past experiences of middle school teacher, Julian. Um, Making everybody in the classroom feel safe. That was
Mhm,
I worked, just an FYI, I worked in inner city, and a lot of children came, middle school kids, how that is 11, 12, 13, crucial time in their lives, broken homes. I'm not saying I know that you know how that is. I'm just saying
mhm,
many people who are familiar with inner city know that a lot of times kids come from homes that are not safe and school
mhm,
is safe, supposedly. All right. And so it was always, um, I don't know, I always took it upon me to create a very safe space in my classroom so that
mhm,
the kids could express themselves and claim that agency. I'm not comparing you to a kid. I'm just saying, like,
mhm.
like just,
Yeah.
that's just what I do. So thank you for
Mhm.
acknowledging that. And I really appreciate it because that's just been who I've been all my personality years. Okay. So
Yeah, you're
you,
creating
thank
something
you.
nice in the world, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. People listening to this, Julian's links are below. And please, if you're in the situation where you have trauma that you're dealing with and you need help, by all means, please reach out and check out Julian and his work. And thank you so much for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie.
All right.